Since producing my videos on my toolbox with a piston fit tray, lots of people have asked me how this is achieved. So the tray is a nice tight fit, it descends on a cushion of air, but without binding. And this is actually easier than it might seem. So if we just remove the tray here, I'll show you how to do it. So the starting point is the carcass. Now the carcass needs to be, just like with drawers, it needs to be absolutely square. If it tapers inwards in any way, then you're not going to be able to achieve a piston fit tray, because the top's going to be too loose and the bottom's going to bind. So you must be absolutely certain when each of these corners are dovetailed that they are dead square. So the starting point's the carcass. Now what I do with each of these pieces here, which are the pieces for the tray which are oversized, is I use the shooting board to fit each one of these prior to dovetailing. So what we're looking for is a fit that it goes in, but it doesn't wobble, and this is best done on the shooting board. So with the 4 pieces, I've marked them all up with which piece goes with which, and I've also put a blue dot here which lines up on the back. So I'm going to show you with this. You can see this is not far off, but it doesn't actually fit. So I'll just square up one end. And then we'll look to see what we've got. And here you can see we've got something that drops in there relatively easily, and then when I wiggle it from side to side, it's a nice fit. So that's one of them done. So we'll look to, if this one's here, that's the red one, so this one is to be fitted into that corner there. So same procedure. And this one needs a little bit more material. Maybe one more. And there you go, that one again, it slides in there, it's not offering me any resistance, and then when you wobble it from side to side, there's no wobble. So that's that one done. So working our way around the carcass, we shoot each one of the 4 sides in relation to the sides on the box to make sure that they're a nice fit, not too loose but not too tight. So with all the pieces shot to fit their individual openings, it's now time to mark up for the dovetails. Now it's very important, having gone to all the trouble of getting these a nice fit, that we don't go and make a baseline that's too low with protruding tails and pins, because by the time we've trimmed those off, then it won't be such a tight fit, it'll be loose and then it will bind. So it's important that we get the fit of these to be pretty much spot on. So if we take a wheel marking gauge, then the method I use for that is to, with both the nuts undone, is to just pull it up tight, lock this one off, and then just with the tip of it start to create pressure. And in creating that pressure, the wood gives a little bit, but you actually end up then with a fit that is spot on. So it's not too high, not too low, and just what we're looking for. So now we can mark up the baselines. So here on the pin board, we're looking there, just going across the faces. And on the corresponding tail board, we're looking at going across the faces, and then using the wheel marking gauge just to roll round. the corners. So with that done, it's time to cut the dovetails. Now I think what we'll go for 5, so we'll have 1 on each end. We'll have 1 somewhere in the middle here, and we'll have 1 in the middle of those 2, 1 in the middle of those 2. So I don't measure these out, I do these by eye, because your eyes are good. They can see the spaces pretty accurately. So now it's time to cut the tails. So for this, because these boards are quite thin, I'm going to be using a 1-in-4 dovetail guide so that it's got quite wide angles and keeps the tray nice and strong. So now we cut the tails. Turn it in the vise. So turning it back so that the show side's facing, we can remove the waste. Okay, so with all the tails and the pins cut and cleaned out, I've also cut the little lift holes here and cut the base to size as well. I mustn't forget to put the base in. So now it's time for assembly. Now where there's lots of dovetails to assemble, it can be a bit hair-raising if you put the glue on and then start to assemble it. So what I like to do is to get a partial assembly going. So if we take the matching boards, just get them to, that should be that one, just get them to go in, then we can take our base, so you can see why this is easier to get into position before the glue's been put on. Just make sure they enter as well, like that, and then take the last sides, and I'm not looking to put these in very far, just a mil, say. Just enough to confirm that the whole thing's going together. So now we're in that position, then it's time to quickly get the glue onto the pins. On both sides, fairly liberally. So, with all the pins glued, it's time to sink everything home. So just check to make sure that everything's flush, that there are no little gaps at the bottom. So now typically what we do is to measure the corners and get this whole thing square. But because we're actually fitting this to this, and we do know that each of the sides just enters the corner, I've found the most accurate way of getting this square, in inverted commas, is to actually take this and adjust it to the opening. So, there we go. We've made the tray conform to the hole that it's going to fit in. So now we need to let that, put it to one side and let that set.